Hi everyone, we're going to read next chapter. I am Lavina Cumming. It's chapter 15, Magic Black and White. And let's see, I'm looking, it's a pretty short one, so I think we'll be able to do 2 chapters today, 15 and 16. Okay. On Easter Monday, Aunt Agnes allowed Lavina to invite Bertie and Susan over to play. It was a beautiful April morning, a school holiday. Lavina leaned over the front gate of 19 Vine Street as she waited for her friends. Birds sang loudly from the trees. Down in Monterey Bay, the ocean glistened, marked here and there with whitecaps, and the waves galloped endlessly onto the beach. Everything would be perfect, thought Lavina. If only I had some news from home. Then she saw a tall, thin shape and a short, round one appear at the top of the hill, and she forgot her troubles. Yoo-hoo! Lavina shouted. Bertie and Susan yoo-hooed back and ran downhill. When they grew tired of playing outdoors, they went upstairs and sat on Lavina's bed. We should have brought our dolls, said Bertie, glancing at Princess Parizade, who lay in her usual place on Lavina's pillow. Oh, we don't need dolls, said Susan. Let's put on a play. Just then Aunt Agnes called, Lavina. She and Cousin Maud stood at the front door, dressed for going out. Maudie and I are attending the Women's Christian Temperance Luncheon, said Aunt Agnes. Bridget will be here if you need anything, and girls, please include Aggie in your games. They looked at each other, not daring to object. Ta-ta, said Cousin Maud, and closed the door behind them. Awful Aggie, said Susan under her breath. Look, said Bertie, here comes the postman. Lavina ran to get the mail, and there it was at last, a letter from home. Read it, Lavina, said Susan. Let's go hide in my room. Dear Sis, wrote Tom, I have good news for you. Father's much better. Lavina raced through the letter, her heart pounding. Worried, thorn in his finger, blood poisoning, doctors in Nogales, no good, whole hand swelled, burning up fever, afraid, gangrene. Then she turned the page, and then Tom wrote, Jim and Bill went for Luce. Luce mashed the leaves of a century plant. She laid them on Father's hand, and then she washed it with some strange tea that she cooked up from a greasewood bush. Father was too sick to say no. The next morning the swelling went down, and he started to get well. We think she saved his life. Father had scrawled a few words after Tom's signature, love to Dottie. Oh, Lavina gasped. How could Father be ill? Father, who was always as strong as mountains behind the house. She tried to picture his face, and to her dismay, she could not quite see him in her mind. The old, safe father was gone. What is it? Asked her friends. When Lavina explained, Susan said, But who is Luz? Well, said Lavina, do you remember that I told you I knew a witch? Luz is a witch? Demanded Susan, her eyes sparkling. A good witch, said Lavina stoutly. A healer. Well, she does tell fortunes. How? Bertie's mouth made an O. She lives in a little mud house all by herself, said Lavina. It's dark inside except for the light from a hole in the roof, and it's full of bundles of herbs and pictures of saints and crystals and paper flowers and feathers and 3 big glass jars full of water. She looks into them and she sees the future. Sometimes she can see the past, too. Once when my mother lost her silver thimble, Luce looked in the water and learned where it was. And she knows the best fairy tales. Tell us one. Bertie plumped herself down cross-legged, leaned her chin on her hands, and waited for Lavina to begin. Houk Muerta. Once, down along the border, there was a horrible monster, the wickedest of witches, part animal, part human, and part demon. She had claws instead of hands, a pig's face, and a female body. She lived like a wildcat in a cave in the mountains near a place called Pozo Verde, or Green Well. And she caught deer, antelope, and mountain lions and ate them. And then, because Ho'uk was partly human, she tanned their hides as a woman does when she got a taste for human flesh. Whenever a baby was crying in the little village of Pozo Verde, Ho'uk would come and offer to take it outside to comfort. Let me hold the baby, my grandchildren, she would croon sweetly. If the parents agreed, she took it away and tore it apart with her claws and ground it on her grinding stone and ate it up. Ugh! Bertie shouted. This can't be true, said Susan. Luce said it was, replied Lavina, but I think it's like Hansel and Gretel. You'll see. So the people decided to stop her. They went to a great magician called Itui, who lived in a cave in a magic mountain called Baba Kwevari. And Itui said, I will kill Ho'uk. First, he invited her to a party. There was a feast, and later there was dancing. For 3 nights in a row, he asked her to come and dance with other people, and she refused. But on the 4th night, Ho'uk dressed herself in her finest buckskin and a necklace of dried white bones, and came to the great circle of rocks, where the people were holding hands and dancing in a ring. She took Itoi's hand, and she danced too with her bone necklace, making a weird rattling noise until she was dizzy. Then he offered her a drugged cigarette, which made her fall into a sound sleep. Nothing could awaken her. Then Itui carried the witch to her cave, and the people walled her in and lighted a huge bonfire. When her toes began to burn, Ho'uk awoke. No, no, why have you done this, my grandchildren? She screamed. She howled and jumped up and down, cracking open the rocks overhead, but she could not escape, so the children were safe ever afterwards. And if you go to Pozo Verde, you can still see the circle of rocks where the people dance with Ho'uk, and the cave with the grinding stone in front of it, and a crack through the roof where she was burned to death. People call that cave Ho'uk Marta, dead witch, and it is still smoky. That last part is true, said Lavina. Luce saw the cave herself. She could almost hear Luce's low voice and her special way of talking, half swallowing the words, leaving wide spaces between them, while her quick brown hands patted out tortilla after tortilla. Oh, cried Lavina suddenly, I miss them all so much. She flung herself upon her bed. I want to go home, she sobbed. Bertie and Susan patted her on the back sympathetically. Wouldn't you miss us too? Asked Bertie. Yes, but Arizona is so far away. I want to see the Bosque Ranch again. Listen, Lavina, said Susan, it's not far away at all, and it never will be. You never can lose it. What do you mean? You have it in your heart. Why, Susan was right, Lavina thought. The silver river flowed, the ranch house roof glittered, the brown, purple, and blue mountains stood firmly in their places. Father and the boys waited for her there forever, and Mama too. Courage, she told herself, and she sat up and wiped her eyes. Would you like to see my magic necklace? She asked. Luce made it for me when I left home. Oh, yes, the girls said. It's a secret, Lavina warned them. I'm not supposed to have it anymore. Aunt Agnes took it away from me, but Bridget saved it, and I keep it hidden here. She unscrewed the knob on the tip of the bedpost and pulled out the string of colored charms. Great Caesar's green galloping ghost, said Susan. Oh, said Bertie. What are those red things? Asked Susan. Coral beans. Are they good to eat? Deadly poison, said Lavina in a deep voice. Black magic, asked Susan. Not exactly, Lavina began, but Bertie jumped up. Someone's listening, she whispered and pointed at the door. Lavina threw it open. There was Aggie, crouched in the hall. Dun, dun, dun. Chapter 16, Queen. What are you doing? Cried Bertie. Lavina felt a chill at her heart, and almost unconsciously she stuffed the necklace into her pocket. On the wall behind Aggie, the picture of Love, squeezing her cherubs, gazed down from her frame. Nothing, said Aggie sullenly. I just wanted to play. The older girls looked at one another. How much has she overheard? Had she actually seen the necklace? Would she tattle? Did you hear what I was saying? Demanded Lavina. A pause. No. Was she telling the truth? Lavina couldn't tell from the expression in Aggie's eyes, as hard and shiny and blank as 2 blue glass marbles. We'd better let her play, Lavina said at last. Aggie, said Susan in a thrilling voice, it's a terrible thing to tell other people's secrets. Girls who do that pay a dreadful price. Aggie's marble eyes shifted from Susan to Bertie to Lavina, but she admitted nothing. I want to play dress-up, she said. Maybe she doesn't know anything, thought Lavina. Dress up in what? Said Bertie. Aggie pointed to the door of the room next to Lavina's, a real attic, which Aunt Agnes called the storeroom. Lavina had never done more than peep at the stacks of old furniture and wooden boxes inside. "There's a trunk full of old clothes in there. My grandma lets me dress up in them whenever I want." Susan's eyes shone, for she loved costumes. "Let's take a look." Aggie led the way. A tarnished brass key stood in the lock of an old-fashioned leather trunk. Aggie turned the key, raised the creaky lid of the trunk, and pulled out a crumpled black taffeta bonnet. Beneath it lay a fur muff and a pair of yellow shriveled kid gloves. "What's this?" asked Lavina. "A hoop skirt?" It was a contraption of wires like a bird cage around a sort of cushion attached to the back of what seemed to be a belt. "I know," said Bertie. "My great-aunt Melissa has one in her attic. It's a bustle. Ladies used to wear them to hold out the back of their gowns." Susan buckled on the bustle and pranced around the storeroom, making the others laugh. Then Lavina discovered an ivory fan with broken sticks, and Susan discarded the bustle in favor of a lace scarf. "I'm a Spanish lady," she said, and struck a pose. "Like the opera," said Bertie. "Oh, I can hardly wait." That very night was the great one. Bertie and Susan's parents were taking their daughters to hear Caruso sing in the opera Carmen. "Papa and Mamma say that the Grand Opera House is magnificent," sighed Bertie. "They also plan to spend the night in a hotel." "My mamma's going too," said Aggie, and a shadow crossed her face. Mr. Mobley had invited Cousin Maud to go in the Oldsmobile to hear Caruso in a matinee performance of another opera, La Boheme. "But I don't care about it. I hate singing. I hate—" Aggie broke off. Lavina was silent. "I'd rather be on the stage than in the audience," said Susan. She floated forward, her nose in the air. "Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the extraordinary, the incomparable Miss Susan Pitts." Ugh, that name. "My mother says every little girl wants to change her name," observed Bertie in her placid way. "Maybe you don't have to change it much," said Lavina. "Susanna Pitts, how about that?" "Still awful." "Let's practice speaking our pieces for the end of school program," suggested Bertie, practical as usual. "But I don't have one," said Aggie. "You can be the audience," said Susan, and she launched into the long and tragic verse of the boy stood on the burning deck. "That was good," said Lavina, when Susan's arms finally stooped, waving and dropping to her sides. "But I like you best when you're funny." "You're next, Lavina," Bertie said. Lavina's piece was short. "My heart leaps up," she began, "when I behold a rainbow sky." A little poem reminded her of summer afternoons at home. First a violent thunderstorm washed the desert country clean, and then the sun began to sink behind the Atascosa Mountains west of the Bosque Ranch. Then suddenly a rainbow would spring from the north to the south across the cloudy sky, its pure colors unlike any others anywhere. "So was it when my life began, so it is now I am a man. So be it when I shall grow old, or let me die." "I'm tired of this," Aggie interrupted. "I want to play dress up. I have naturally curly golden hair, and I want to be a queen." "All right," Bertie said. "This paisley shawl can be your cape, and here's a necklace." "I need a crown," said Aggie. "Try this old pudding pan," said Susan, and she balanced it on Aggie's curls. The pan actually did resemble a crown, but Aggie shook it angrily onto the floor. "I want a good crown." Again the older girls looked at one another. "I could make you one," said Bertie, who was used to amusing her many little brothers and sisters. "How?" "Well, I need colored paper and scissors and glue." "All right," said Aggie, appeased. "I have paper and scissors in my room." "And Bridget can get us a glue pot," said Lavina. Bertie quickly fashioned a tall silver crown studded with paper, rubies, and emeralds. Delighted, Aggie put it on and preened, but the crown was too large and it tumbled over one of Aggie's eyes. She looked ridiculous. A giggle escaped from Lavina and Aggie's face grew stormy. "Fix it." "I'll try," said Bertie. She fiddled with the crown, but it was still too large. Aggie stamped her foot. "You're doing this on purpose," she said. "You better fix it or else." "Or else what?" asked Lavina. Her patience was draining away. How she would love to take Addie by her skinny shoulders and shake her until her teeth rattled and her famous curls tangled. "I don't know what," Aggie teased. Bertie snipped the crown apart and re-glued it. Just wait a moment now till it's dry, she said. I want to be a queen now, said Aggie. Lavina heard the sound of the ocean roar through her ears, and immediately she felt warm and enormously powerful. I'll fix it, she snapped. She seized the glue pot and dabbed the brush full of the pungent yellow substance. As Bertie and Susan watched in fascination, shocked yet amused, Lavina painted a sticky ring of glue all around the inner surface of the crown. Try that, she said, and set the crown on Aggie's head. Aggie was so busy admiring herself in the mirror that she didn't notice anything odd about the crown. Right away, she set about playing queen. Bow, she ordered. You must obey my royal commands. They tried not to snicker as she sat in the old red velvet armchair and said, The queen wants candy. Susan played along. Your Majesty, we must ask the royal hired girl. Very well, said Aggie. Do it. They all trooped downstairs, and Bridget provided cookies along with a keen and quizzical look. I am the queen, boasted Aggie. Are you now? Said Bridget. And queen of what, may I ask? The Cannibal Islands, is it? No, 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 shrieked Aggie wildly. Queen of them. They must do my bidding. The older girls, tired of this game long before Addie did. Fear of what she might do, however, kept them from rebellion. Finally, they heard the front door open and the thump step of a crutch. Mama, Mama, cried Aggie, racing to meet them. Look at me. Why, you're a lovely queen, said Cousin Maud, somewhat absently. Aunt Agnes asked where the crown came from. They made it for me, said Aggie. See the jewels? I see that you have been in my old trunk, said her grandmother. Next time, it would be better to ask permission first. Mrs. Scott, said Susan, excuse me, please. I'm sorry about opening the trunk without asking, and thank you for a nice time, but Bertie and I have to go home now because we're supposed to go to the city to see Caruso, and my mother will raise the roof if we're late. And thank you again. Goodbye. I don't care, called Aggie after them. I'm sick of this ugly old crown anyway. Now, is that nice? Said Cousin Maud, but not as if she really expected Aggie to answer. Meanwhile, Lavina watched Aggie reach up and try to remove the silver crown. And in fact, she lifted it slightly from her head, but no farther. The top layer of her curls lifted with it. Aggie let out a scream, the same sort of infuriated shriek that she uttered when her mother combed her hair into ringlets. What's the matter? Asked Cousin Maud. Aggie's face was almost purple. They did it to me, she pointed a shaky finger at Lavina. She did it. Did what? said Aunt Agnes with some impatience. They glued my crown to my head, wailed Aggie. Now I'll never get it off. Chapter 17 that we will read tomorrow, The Pearl-Handed Derringer. Hope you guys enjoyed that.